Hey guys, welcome back to part 2 of my eyeshadow palette collection and declutter. So I do eyeshadow palette collection videos every year in February. This year I decided to add the declutter element to it just because I've been getting a little bit overwhelmed. So if you missed part 1, I basically went through these 3 top drawers right here and I decluttered a bunch of things so they look a whole lot neater, but the bottom row is another story. We're going to go ahead and tackle that one today. I have ColourPop, Lorac, Juvia's Place, and Makeup Revolution. So let's go ahead and get into it. I have a feeling I'm going to be decluttering a lot of my Makeup Revolution palettes, maybe some of these in the middle. I'm probably not going to get rid of too many ColourPop palettes because I do use those a lot for comparison purposes. ColourPop releases so frequently and they often dupe themselves, so it really helps to keep those older palettes because I always get questions when a new palette comes out, like, is it similar to this one or that one from ColourPop? So probably not going to get rid of too many, if any, in that drawer. I'll probably just go ahead and straighten it up. So let's go ahead and jump right in and get started. All right, guys, so let's start out with Revolution. So I know I have a lot of their palettes, and they were one of my favorite eyeshadow brands back in the day. When they first launched, I felt like there wasn't a lot of variety at the drugstore. They did a lot of dupes for higher end palettes like the Too Faced chocolate bars and stuff. So I really loved them a lot, and I bought a ton of stuff from them, but I just feel like over time we've had brands come out like ColourPop, BH Cosmetics really stepped up their eyeshadow formula. We have LA Girl really having a great eyeshadow formula as well, and even brands like Juvia's Place that are more affordable and yet have a super awesome formula. So I just kind of stopped using these as much or reaching for them, and I also kind of stopped recommending them on my channel just because for the most part the quality just isn't as good as some of those other brands. So I think I'm probably going to let go of a lot here today just because I don't really see the sense in keeping them. I'm not really using them myself, and I'm not really recommending them to you guys either. So let's start out with these 3. So I felt like these were kind of supposed to be dupes for the Huda Beauty Obsessions palettes, but the quality was pretty terrible. I really was not a big fan of these. So here we had a light version, a medium, and then a dark. So I think I'm going to go ahead and put these in the declutter pile right away. Also, we have the Soph collab that they did. This palette is super old. This was one of my favorites for a really long time, but it's just kind of really old at this point. Even though I felt like the formula of this one wasn't too bad, I think I'm going to go ahead and put this one in the declutter pile. Same with this one. This was another Soph one. This was the Extra Spice, and the cover actually started peeling off randomly. So this is what it looked like inside, and it was really pretty, but I think I'm going to have to just put this in the declutter as well. I haven't used it in years. Also, we have the Emily Noel ones, and as sad as I am to declutter these because I love Emily, I didn't use these all that much. I thought they were nice palettes, but again, they're several years old now, and I just don't use them. So this was the Wants palette, which had tons of different colors, and then we had the Needs palette, which had just like your basic everyday neutrals. I really like the concept. I thought she did a great job on these, but again, just I feel like there are other brands that I reach for a lot more. I also have 2 of these XX Revolution palettes. These actually are not too bad. I might hang on to these because I think as far as the formula goes, these are better than a lot of their other ones. They just seem to have creamier shimmer shades that were, you know, nice and foiled, really smooth, and I felt like they're mattes too. They were nicely pigmented. So I'll probably just hang on to these a little bit longer. This one was Expectation. And then this one was Tuxedo. This was so pretty. Actually, this reminds me a lot of a Scott Barnes palette that I have that was really expensive, and the color story is super similar. So I may have to see if I can dupe that with this one at some point. Also, these 3 from XX Revolution I just got super recently, so I'm definitely going to hang on to these for now. We had Pretty Little XX. These were just fun, peachy palettes, and again, I thought the formula was pretty good with these. So so far, you know, I really haven't had too many complaints with XX Revolution. This one broke actually in transit. That's why it looks all crumbly. I had to kind of press it back together. And then this one was Basic Peach. By the way, this one that had the broken shade was Cozy AF. All right, and then next up we had the Forever Flawless palettes. I really loved these when they came out, but I don't really reach for them that much anymore. This was the Forever Flawless Constellation. I'm pretty sure a lot of these also have been discontinued. I did think this was a better formula for them, but like this one I hardly ever wore just because of the color story. I felt like it was a little bright for me, so I'm probably gonna declutter this one. And then this one was Forever Flawless Utopia. I think I'm going to put this one in the declutter pile as well. I just don't really use these very often. Optimum, this was my favorite of all of them. I used this one a bunch. I really loved the colors in here a lot. I might still hang on to this. I'll have to try it a couple times and see if the quality is still how I remember it, but I mean, it seems like it is. The shimmers were really beautiful, easy to pick up, and the matte shades too. I mean, they had some nice pigmentation to them. So I think I'll keep this one just because I really love the color story. This one was Decadent, and this was just a really pretty peachy palette, but I have so many that look just like this. I think I'm going to go ahead and declutter it because like I have ColourPop ones that, again, I like the formula a little bit better, so I really don't need to have this one as well. This one was Unconditional Love. I actually have shown this as a dupe for the Natasha Denona Love palette. I think they are so similar and so close, and I really think the color story of this one is beautiful, so I might actually hang on to this one too. I'm not sure if it's still available for purchase, but either way, I personally like it, so I know I'll probably still use it. Next we have the Allure. This one I felt like was such a dupe for Huda Beauty's new nude palette. It's really similar, and I have so many dupes for that palette that I probably don't need this one too, so I think I'm going to declutter this one. And then this was Forever Flawless Ice, and I really don't use blues that often. This just has too many blues in here for me, and a lot of them are really bright. Even though this visually looks beautiful, I know I'm not going to wear it on my eyes, so I'm going to go ahead and declutter this one. Next up, we have their like chocolate bar style palettes from I Heart Revolution. Even though I think all the color stories of these are super beautiful, I'm probably going to declutter them all just because I never reach for these and I don't think the formula is the absolute best. So the first one is the Pooches palette. Again, super pretty, but I just don't use this. This one was Macaroon, and even though this one had some blues in it, it also had a lot of neutrals, so I really did love this color story. Next up is Cranberries and Chocolate, some beautiful rosy tones. And then this one was Violet. Next we had Strawberry Cheesecake. Chocolate and Peaches, this one was a Too Faced Peach Palette dupe. It has pretty much the identical shades in it. And next up was S'mores. This is one of my favorites because it was such a good neutral palette. You had so many different browns and golds in here. It was really pretty. And then we have Lemon Drizzle. And then this one was Peanut Butter Cup. All right, so decluttering all of those. And then we had this one, which also I was not impressed with the formula of this. This one was called the Ultraviolet Reflective Palette. I want to say I got this last year or the year before from Ulta, but these colors were so hard to pick up. They really were like super sheer. So I think I'll definitely be decluttering this one. Next up, we have the Reloaded palettes, and I actually don't mind these, maybe because they're only like $7, and I feel like even if the formula isn't the absolute best, like they're half the price of these. I want to say these run like $15 each. So for $7, I'm much more likely to recommend a palette if, you know, somebody really wants something under $10. You can make them work. You can build them up if you have to. You can wet the shimmers for a little more intensity or whatever. So I may hang on to some of these. So the first one we have is the Iconic Division. I don't know how many of these are still actually being made, but this one was supposed to be like a subculture dupe. And it has a really similar vibe to that. Next up is Iconic Vitality. This one is a Modern Renaissance dupe. And then Hypnotic is an ABH Sultry dupe. Then we have Smoky Neutrals. I want to say this one might have been like an Urban Decay Naked, like original Naked palette dupe. I'm not positive, but I do know most of these were dupes for something else. So I can't remember what this one was off the top of my head. The next one was Velvet Rose, and this one was a dupe for Soft Glam. And really, like I said, the formula is not too bad on these. They pick up pretty easily. For $7, they're really not that bad. This one was super pretty. It was one of my favorites. Then we have Reloaded Visionary, which I believe was a dupe for the Norvina palette from ABH. And then this last one was Deep Dive. I probably use this one the least just because, again, of all the blues in here. So I'll probably put this one in the declutter pile since I'm not likely to use it. And then we had the Wild Animal Courage palette, which if you guys have been around on my channel for a while, you know this is like my favorite palette that Revolution ever made. The formula is spectacular. It is so beautiful, so incredibly pigmented. It feels like high-end shadows. I'm really sorry that they discontinued these, but I do still use this one just for me. So even if I don't talk about it on my channel, I'm still gonna go ahead and keep this one because, like I said, it is my favorite palette from Makeup Revolution. So put that over here. And then the last one is their Maxi Reloaded palette. So this is the Reloaded formula, but you just have a ton of different shades. And I did really like the rosy shades in here. Again, I felt like the formula wasn't all that bad. It actually, I want to say last time I looked, had like 4.9 out of 5-star reviews on Ulta. So plenty of people do really like the Reloaded formula. So I think I will probably hang on to this for now. So let's take a final count of what I'm keeping and what I'm getting rid of. Okay, so final total, I'm going to be keeping 15 palettes, getting rid of 23. So I had a feeling this one was going to be pretty brutal. Like I said, I'm just not the biggest Makeup Revolution fan these days when it comes to their eyeshadows, but there are a few that I feel like are worth keeping for now. So that's Makeup Revolution. All right, guys, next let's move on to Juvia's Place. So I have quite a few palettes from Juvia's. I don't think I'm going to be getting rid of any of these, so I'll just show you guys what I have and talk a little bit about each one really quick. So first up, we have the Nomad palette. This one's just a great neutral palette. You do have that pop of yellow in there. It has a little bit of glitter, even though it's a matte shade. I also love this olive green down here. I feel like it pairs so beautifully with some of the colors in the palette. So I really enjoyed this one. Next up, we have the Warrior. This one is also a neutral palette. It's more warm neutral. You have kind of the bronzy, coppery shades in here. And the formula is incredible. If you haven't tried Juvia's Place yet, I highly recommend it. And the palettes are relatively inexpensive. They're close to drugstore prices, but they often have sales on their website. And then you can also stack influencer codes on top of it as well. I actually have one. It's Jen, and it'll save you 10%. But like I said, you can always stack that code usually on top of whatever other sale they have going on. Then we have the Warrior 2. This one was an all matte palette. I would say I probably used this one the least just because I do like a shimmer on my lid. But I do really love the color story. I like how they do neutrals, but they're not just straight neutrals. You still do have a little bit of color in here to play with. And then I have some of their mini palettes as well. I have the Bronze Rustic, which I got last summer. And I really enjoyed this one so much more than I ever thought I would. I think because this bright shade kind of stood out to me a little bit, but if you cover this one up, it's very neutral for the most part and just really easy to wear. And this does make a nice accent color, so I think this one was so pretty. And then we have the Blushed Rose. This one I also got around the same time over the summer. And this is just absolutely stunning. I love the pinks in the crease with this. For some reason, this combo is so beautiful. Or if you want to go all pink, you can use this one on your lid. I really enjoy this one a lot. I think I actually got this one at Ulta. And then we have the Taupes palette. I only used this one a couple of times, but these are definitely my colors. I love the cool tones. So if I'm in the mood for like a gray or taupe, definitely reach for this one. And then we have the Nubian 3 Coral. This one I loved initially because I thought the cool tones were beautiful, but when I actually went to play with it, I did struggle a little bit when it came to creating looks with this palette. I'm not sure why. I just had a hard time mixing the grays with like these peachy and coral shades. So I would say other than the all matte Warrior 2, this is another one that I really don't reach for all that much. The Saharan palette by Juvia's is one of my favorites. This was, I think, the first one I ever purchased. And again, it does look a little bit colorful, but if you cover up like this really bright shade right here, it's actually pretty neutral. There are a couple colors, but I feel like they're not super crazy bright. And again, formula is just so, so good. The Afrique by Juvia's. This one I actually got when they had a crazy Black Friday sale, and I haven't actually used it, so I think I definitely need to get on that. It was, I want to say like maybe $5 or something that I paid for this, so it was worth getting just as a collector, but yeah, I kind of feel bad that I haven't tried it out yet, so I definitely need to make a point to do that. Next up we have the Nubian. I feel like this was probably the second one that I purchased, and if you're somebody who really likes neutrals and you don't like a lot of color and you want to try Juvia's formula, this is a great place to start. Next up we have the Tribe, and this one, again, just really pretty, like interesting pops of color, but you also have some neutrals mixed in as well. The Deuce palette, this one was a favorite of mine for such a long time when I first got it. This shade is absolutely beautiful. I love the pinks mixed with like the green. It's just a really nice combination. Then we have the Festival, and this one's another really bright one, so I don't tend to use it all that often, but if you like bright colors, you can't beat the formula. It's so good. Next up we have Saharan 2. This one's a little bit colorful, but not super bold and bright, and I think the combination of blues and like the copper and gold shades is really pretty. And then we have Nubian 2. This was another one that I got during like a crazy Black Friday sale and just have not had the chance to use it yet. But I love the look of it. I just have to put this aside too and make sure that I try it out. And then last but not least, we have the Magic palette. This is the biggest one that I have, and the pan sizes are huge as well in most of these. So I feel like you really do get a lot for your money. And like I said, the quality is just insane. The shimmer shades are just so reflective, so smooth and beautiful. And I feel like the mattes also are pigmented but easy to work with. They're not unblendable or anything. So definitely check out Juvia's Place if you haven't already. All right, so I think as far as decluttering goes, I'm probably gonna go ahead and let go of the Nubian 3, just because like I said, I don't really know what to do with this one. And then the Festival, because I also just don't really use it. And then maybe the Warrior 2, which is just an all matte palette. And like I said, I don't typically reach for those all that much. So I'm going to be decluttering 3 and keeping 13. All right, moving on to Lorac. I definitely know which ones I already want to declutter. So I think I'll show you guys those first, and then we'll just move on and kind of open each palette and show you guys the rest of what I have. So let's start out with the California Dreamin' palette. So this has been one of my favorites over the years, but at this point it's so old. I'm really not using it that much anymore, but I don't want to completely declutter it. I think I'm going to put this in my makeup museum. I think it would be fun to revisit this like down the road because it was such a good palette, such a great color story, and if I could ever find a dupe for it, I think that would be amazing. So I'm going to put this in the museum pile. Also, the Beauty and the Beast. It was a Disney collab that they did. It looks like a book. And then inside you had the beautiful mirror, you have the brush. I just thought this was so, so pretty. So I've kind of kept it for that reason. I also think the colors were beautiful. So I might stick this one in the museum as well. Next up we have the Mega Pro 3. This is going to be tough because I don't really use this palette anymore, but I love their Mega Pro palette so much. I love this formula. I don't know, I'm having a hard time deciding to get rid of it, but I do kind of think I need to let it go at this point. I'm going to keep their regular Pro palettes, so yeah, I'm probably going to just get rid of this one. Also, these 3 palettes, oh my gosh, I loved these so, so much. I wish they didn't discontinue them, but again, I just think at this point, they're really old. I haven't been using them. These were eye and face palettes, so you had 4 eyeshadow shades here, and then face products on this side, but you could also use these on your eyes too. And I loved these color stories. That was Santa Monica. And then we have the Malibu one. Aren't they so pretty? I used to use this bronzer as like a crease color and a bronzer. So I just thought these were so fun and like easy to bring on trips and things like that. Then we have this one, which was Venice Beach. I might put these in the makeup museum as well. I don't want to completely get rid of them, but I do want to kind of get them out of my regular rotation too, since I'm not using them. And then these palettes as well, these are just incredibly old and I don't really feel comfortable using the formula anymore. We have the Lorac Pro to Go. So this one had eyeshadows and face powders on this side. And then on this side, you had 2 blushes and a bronzer. It was really convenient. I kind of wish they'd do another one like this. It was a little chunky, but definitely like easy to take on travel because it's so small. Then we had the Pro Metal, which was like an all shimmer palette. I love Lorac's formula, but I just don't tend to reach for all shimmer palettes very much, so I didn't really use this a lot. And then same thing with their Pro Matte. It was really beautiful, but I felt like these colors, a lot of them were in their regular Pro palettes. So I didn't really use this. I think I swatched it a few times, but that's about it. So I'm going to declutter this one as well. All right, so now let's move on to the palettes that I am going to be keeping. So on the top, we have some of their newer palettes. We have Noir and Soleil. So Noir has really beautiful cool tones mixed with warm. I really enjoy this palette, and I think their new formula is stellar. It's so good. And then Soleil was like a warm toned version. I really like what they did here with this one, with the matte 9 pan on this side and then the shimmers over here. And then we had the artist edition, which also had just really gorgeous. I love like just the kind of dustier vibe of this, very neutral for the most part. And then we have Fairy Tale Forest, which was the newest, latest one that I've gotten. I got this back in the fall and I still love this palette so much. I highly recommend it. This has been getting a lot of use ever since I bought it, and I think these greens are stunning and just like a fun pop of color in an otherwise neutral palette. So love this. They also released these 3 little mini palettes in the new formula. So we have Mystic Oak, which is more of like a cool toned kind of smoky or neutral palette. Then Frosted Sequoia was also neutrals. And then Winter Rose had more of like a rosy toned vibe. So pretty. So definitely hanging on to those. Then of course we have the Unzipped palette, one of my favorite Lorac palettes of all time. This palette just is stunning. It's an all rosy tone neutral palette, and these shades just make such an impact on your eyes, specifically these shimmers, like unbelievable. This is my favorite one to use, and every time I use this palette, people always compliment me on my eye makeup. But really it's the palette. It just kind of blends itself, and the shimmers are so smooth yet foiled at the same time. And I honestly don't know how they do it, but this is one of my all-time favorites that I just reach for over and over again. Somewhere under here, we also have Unzipped Gold. I've been hanging on to this one, I guess for nostalgia, but I don't really use this one super often, and I'll tell you guys why. I think it's mainly because like these 2 shades look almost the same on your eyes, and these 2 almost look the same on your eyes. I wish there was more variety. I think the shimmers are pretty, especially if you're going for like some of these golds, but really I only use like these 3 on my lid. These are kind of too light, so I usually use them as an inner corner highlight. I don't know, it's just not my absolute favorite, although the formula is really good, so I kind of just hung on to it for that reason. Next up, we have the Luxe Diamond palette. I haven't used this one a ton. They actually sent this in PR a while back, and I think it's pretty. I think it's their old formula, which honestly I had no complaints about. I think the new one is definitely an upgrade, but I think the old formula is honestly really good too. Lorac's matte shades, like I said before, they just blend themselves. So if you struggle with blending like I do, you'll find that you just come out with really great eye looks when you use these palettes. They're just so user-friendly. This one was also a newer release. I want to say it came out last year, like around holiday maybe. Not last year 2021, but maybe 2020. And I love the vibe of this. It has a lot of cool tones in it and some neutrals. So I think I'll keep this one. It's not really that old. And then I have the 4 Pro palettes. So let's just do them in order. We have the Pro 1, the original, and this one is just very neutral. All of these are laid out with the mattes on the top row and then the shimmer shades on the bottom. Pro 2 was more of a cool tone color story. It had that pop of blue in there, this green, so this was another really pretty one. Pro 3 I think is so underrated. A lot of people said this really didn't have enough color, but I just thought it was beautiful. And it's very neutral overall. I didn't feel like it was overly warm or overly cool, but I didn't feel like it was more one than the other. So I really like this one a lot. And then Pro 4 had more rosy tones. And this was one of my favorites as well. So definitely hanging on to all of these. All right, so when it comes to Lorac, I'm keeping 15 palettes and decluttering 9. Some of these are going in the makeup museum, others are just getting decluttered, but either way, they're going to be out of my regular rotation. All right, guys, moving on to ColourPop. I have a ton of things to go through, so I'm going to try to go as quickly as I can. And as I mentioned in the beginning of the video, I don't think I'm going to declutter anything just because I use these so much for comparisons. So these are my 30 pan eyeshadow palettes. So let's start out with It's a Mood. This one came out in the fall of 2021. It's beautiful. I love how much color there is in here, but again, it's not like a super bright palette. So for me, these are wearable colors. Also, we have your golden. I literally just got this, so I haven't even played with it yet. I just took it out of the box, but I had placed a ColourPop order and I realized I didn't have this one yet. So I do kind of collect ColourPop palettes, and I thought this one was so pretty. It's very warm toned overall with a couple pops of color. Next, we have So Jaded. I believe this one's been discontinued. This was the Kathleenlights collab. And this one's kind of similar to It's a Mood in that it's sort of like muted color, and you have a lot of variety in here with the greens and blues and reds. Next up, we have Gone Matte. They just sent this to me in PR very recently, so all I've done so far is swatch it. As I've mentioned a few times now, I'm not really a big fan of all matte palettes, but I do think the colors in here are beautiful. Then I would say these are probably my top 3, the ones that I wear and use the most often. So Bare Necessities is just like the perfect warm neutral palette. You just have so many options to pick from, and I've duped so many different palettes using just this one because it just has those really common colors that are in so many different palettes. And I love how it also has this row of kind of dusty purples in kind of the mix of all the different warm browns. So I think this palette's so great. Another favorite is Stone Cold Fox. This is like the cool neutral version. So you have your grays in here, you have your dusty pinks, and also some taupe shades. So this is another great one. I feel like this is a good dupe for something like Natasha Denona's Glam palette, for example. It has a lot of the same colors. And my personal favorite would have to be Smoke and Roses. I got this one, again, I think back in the fall this came out, or maybe it was around the holidays, I'm not sure, but I've been using this palette non-stop. I use it so much because it just has like the rosy tones that I really gravitate toward. And you do have some just basic neutral shades mixed in too if you just want to do that. And it doesn't hurt that all of the shades are named after 80s rock bands or like hair metal songs. So yeah, it's amazing. Next, I have some custom palettes that I made with their BYOP tool on their website. So you can go on their website and choose either a large palette like this or a 12 pan and just select your own singles to put in it and create your own color story. I have so much fun playing with that. So this was just an empty palette style that they had, and then inside I actually put some of their pressed powder blushes, which I'm kind of sad that I don't see them on their website anymore. I don't know if they've discontinued them, but I really loved the formula, so I'd be really bummed if they got rid of those. And then I did like 2 rows of single shadows right here. Then this was another palette that I built just with a whole bunch of different singles. I loved like the purple vibe in here. I did put a couple blues as well. This shade is amazing. I don't know if they still have this one. It's called On a Whimsy, but it's like the craziest silver. Like look at how intense that is. It's beautiful. And then this was another palette of singles with some warmer tones in it and a couple of their pressed glitters. So those are some of the custom palettes I have. I want to say I do have some smaller ones as well, but you'll probably see those later on in the video. Next up, we have some of their 15 pan palettes. So first up is Garden Variety. This is one of my favorites for spring. I love this. It's so beautiful. Next up, we have the Disney Designer It's a Princess Thing palette. This was one of my favorites as well. I just love how soft it is. Then we have the Disney Villains Misunderstood palette. Not one of my favorites because it was mostly all shimmer shades. I did like the colors, I just wish that it had more mattes. This was definitely a favorite of mine, All I See Is Magic, and I remember when it's from because it actually said right on the top, Holiday 2017. This color story was just beautiful. I loved like the muted tones in here. In a way, it kind of reminded me of that Lorac California Dreamin' palette. It was just so soft and pretty. Next up is Gather Round Sisters, their Hocus Pocus collab. I actually got this one this year. I missed out on it last year. And then when they brought it back to Ulta for 2021, I grabbed it right away. And then last but not least, we have Sandstone. This one had some really pretty warm neutrals with the pop of yellow and a couple of greens. Next up, we have some of their 16 pan palettes. So first up, we have Fame and Fortune. These launched together. Fame was more of a cool tone vibe and is still one of my favorite ColourPop palettes to this day. I feel like it was the very first cool tone palette that they came out with, and I love it. Again, it's just really soft, everyday wearable colors. And then Fortune was the warm tone version of it. So this was like kind of like every palette that was coming out back then. I believe these were from 2018. And the reason I'm thinking that is because I actually wore the Fame palette at my sister's wedding, which was in 2018. And I had just gotten it like that spring. Yeah, these were definitely great. And then I also have the Truly Madly Deeply palette, which I believe is still available on their website. I saw it the other day. At first, this was an Ulta exclusive, and then they brought it over to their site. I'm not sure if it's still at Ulta, but this one had 3 glitters, which I wasn't crazy about, but I did really love the colors in the rest of the palette. Next up is the Through My Eyes palette, and this one was, again, kind of warm neutrals with bright pops of color. And they actually had a few palettes that looked very, very similar to this, which I'll definitely mention as we go forward. And then last was Perception. This was a collab they did with Shayla. And the color story of this one reminded me a lot of the Urban Decay Born to Run palette. I did comparisons between the two a while ago, and I felt like they were so similar. This one just doesn't have quite as many shades. All right, next up we have the 12 pan palettes. I have a couple of huge stacks here, and I definitely have the most of these out of anything. I've been collecting them for such a long time. So first I'll start out with my custom 12 pan palettes that I made. So this is the first one, and just mostly added all of their green singles to a palette plus a couple of neutrals. Then this was another one that I created that just was like warm tones with a pop of yellow. And then this one, I just added a bunch of rosy tones. And I wasn't so much putting together palettes with these as I was just collecting like all of the similar colors. So like I wanted a bunch of rosy tones. I just ordered a whole bunch and put them in one palette. Same with the greens, same with like the warmer colors. And I figured at some point maybe I would like mix and match them and create my own unique color stories, but I haven't really played with these in quite a while. All right, so next let's get into their regular 12 pan palettes, and I want to start with this one, which was Yes Please. This is their first ever pressed powder palette that they ever came out with. In the beginning, ColourPop only had Super Shock shadows and lippy sticks, and when they started doing regular eyeshadow palettes, everybody was so excited, myself included. I collected pretty much all of them until the releases became so often that now I really only buy the ones that I'm really interested in. But back then I was sure to get every single release. So this was the first one, and I felt like it was such a close dupe for Natasha Denona's Sunset palette. And this type of color story was just so trendy back then. Everybody was doing it. And then this one, Element of Surprise, I believe, if memory serves, was their second release ever. And this one was all neutral pretty much, except you just had the purple and the hot pink in the middle. And this one's kind of like a purple, like a deep berry color. I think it'd be fun one day to do a whole video and just show all of ColourPop's palettes like in date order from when they were released. I don't remember them all. I really just remember these two. And then Give It To Me Straight. This was definitely towards the beginning sometime. I'm not exactly sure when, but this was one of my favorites. It had rosy tones mixed with like warm tones. Just a really easy neutral palette. My Little Pony was also, I feel like, very early on, and I thought this one was super pretty. I loved kind of the pastel-y vibe that it had, but it wasn't super light. You did still have some nice mid-tones and a couple deeper shades in here as well to balance it out. And then we had Sweet Nothings. This was a beautiful, like pink and purple, really light-toned color story. Then we had the She palette. This was another one that was very early on, like in the first year that they started creating these. You're definitely going to see a lot of older palettes you may have forgotten about in this video. Next is Sweet Talk. This is the old packaging. I think they've actually updated the Sweet Talk palette because I saw it not too long ago and I was like, wait, what palette is that? And then I realized they just changed the cover art. It's the same inside. And this was another favorite. I really loved these peachy colors. I could have done without the 2 pressed glitters, but other than that, I really enjoyed this one. Ménage à Moi, this one was kind of a more recent release, maybe last holiday, I want to say, or the one before. And I really like the dusty mauvey tones of this one. Super pretty. Boudoir Noir was also, I think, released at the same time as Ménage à Moi. And this one was super pretty too because it was like a smoky green palette, which is something you never really see. Most of the time smoky palettes are like gray or brown. So I love this one. This is a great one. Then we had the two where the packaging looked almost identical, and I have to look at the back to see what they are. We had I Think I Love You and Double Entendre. These were really, really early on as well. Again, just very warm neutrals, kind of a little bit boring compared to some of the others, but I used the heck out of this when I first got it. And I Think I Love You was also neutrals. You did have this kind of bright yellow down here, but other than that, if you cover it up, it's kind of similar to Double Entendre. X's and O's, I believe, was a Valentine's Day release a couple years ago now, and it kind of had like rosier browns with the golds. Whatever was kind of a similar vibe to X's and O's. It had the rosy browns again and the golds. I didn't use this one nearly as much as I wanted to. I definitely need to play with this one some more. You Had Me at Hello. This was another absolute favorite of mine for so long. It was neutral, but a little bit on the cooler side. You had like the taupe and the purple. I mean, there were definitely warm tones as well. Next up, we had Salvaje. This is one of the ones that was super similar to the Through My Eyes palette, which I showed a little while back. So let me just show you guys for comparison's sake. It had those same kind of reddish berry tones, the teal, the gold. So these two were very much alike. And same thing with the Rendezvous palette. So let me just open this one up as well. Again, they kind of like almost duped themselves. It was so similar to Through My Eyes and Salvaje. So when I swatched all of these out together, it was really like even more apparent. Next up, we had Flutterbye. This was another gorgeous, absolutely stunning cool tone palette. So I love this one with the dusty purples. California Love is another big favorite. I love the warm tones, but they actually included some, like this tangerine shade I thought was super interesting. And I love this terracotta here as well. They just did something slightly different than the usual bright orange and bright yellow. So I use this one a lot. Next up, we have Sailor Moon. And this one's kind of refreshing how different it is. Like, you've seen so many of the same colors over and over again throughout all of these palettes. And this one, while it is a little bit brighter, I felt like it was still wearable for me. Nothing was like too crazy. I thought it was just really soft and pretty. It's a great springtime palette. All That I thought was kind of similar to the Whatever palette and the X's and O's. You had kind of these deeper, rosier tones. Bye Bye Birdie also had a lot of rosier tones in it and really like a cooler tone vibe overall. So I really like this one too. It did have two pressed glitters though, which I wasn't crazy about. Next we had the Kathleenlights Zodiac palette. This one was okay. It wasn't my absolute favorite because I felt like it was a little bit disjointed. I know a lot of people love this palette, but I had trouble coming up with looks for it. For some reason, I just felt like a lot of the colors in here were all kind of too different. I mean, I know I'm not the most creative person when it comes to makeup, so that could be why. You Are a Cutie. This one, super cute. This was, I think, another Valentine's Day release. And I love the cool tones, love the purples. This one was a super cute palette. Then we also had Dream Street from Kathleenlights. In this one, you had a lot of really warm tones, plus the two pops of turquoise. Then we have Lush Life. This one was somewhat of a newer palette. I want to say it came out last year, maybe. And it just had some really pretty brights, although I did feel like they kind of did a shimmer shade and a matching matte throughout this whole palette. So you could kind of go right down these rows and create a look if you wanted to. Good Sport, you guys know how I feel about Good Sport. One of my all-time favorite palettes from ColourPop. I just love these colors so much. It's honestly the perfect fall palette because you don't have like all the red and orange. I love that they included the greens, the purples. They're all just so complementary. So this is a wonderful palette. And then we have Off Melrose. This was another one that I really enjoyed a lot. I loved the greens that you have. Also this one, this duochrome with the blue, stunning. And these dustier pinks. So I really like this one a lot. And then Wild Nothing was another really soft, very spring-like palette. Perfect if you have more of like a fair to light skin tone especially. And then the last three that I have are 12 pans, but they kind of started making them a little bit bigger. So you can see like the palette size is bigger and then the pan size inside is also a little larger. So we have Plush Like Me. And this one I felt like because it has the metallic background, it was so hard to see the colors. But when I actually swatched this out, it surprised the heck out of me how beautiful this was. It's such a stunning palette. It has a really like 90s theme with the shade names like Ironic and Slip Dress and TLC. flannel. So I really love this palette a lot, just for like the vibes of it, but also the colors are beautiful. Then we had the Limoncello palette. I think this came out last spring, and this one's super beautiful as well, really spring-like. I love like the citrusy tones that it had. And then the last one is Ticket to Dreamland. This one I got very recently around the holidays of 2021, and I love these soft and pretty colors so much. So anyway, those are all of my 12 pan palettes. All right, moving on, we have the 9 pan palettes. So I have ones that are in the plastic packaging that are mostly like monochromatic color stories, and then I have the ones in the cardboard packaging. So I'm just gonna go through all of these really fast because I have so many of them. So first up, we have Just My Luck, which was like a green monochromatic color story. And then It's My Pleasure was a purple monochromatic palette. And then we have Baby Got Peach and Lucky Penny and Orchid You Not, Going Coconuts. This one's one of my favorites. And then we have Main Squeeze. And then we have Orange You Glad and Blue Moon. Aha Honey and Smoke Show. Then we had Brown Sugar. This was one of my absolute favorites. This was from a really long time ago. And then we had Soul. This is also a really old one. And Mar, which came out around the same time as Soul. I think they released together. And the last one is Ooh La La. All right, so those are the plastic packages. Let's go over to the cardboard. So first up, we have She's Got Solstice. And then we have Hello Kitty and Friends. This one they did the square pans. And then Grandeur. All Amethyst. This one's a pretty recent release. All Things Equinox. And High Tide. Making Mauves. This was another favorite of mine. And Nude Mood. I love this one as well. And Night Owl. Of course, we have the Child palette. And Feelin' Bubbly. This was also a pretty recent release. It had the larger pans. And That's Taupe. I love this one as well. It's kind of like a smaller version of Stone Cold Fox. Blush Crush. I think this one was released with Nude Mood as well. And then we had the Frozen 2 palettes. So this one was Elsa. And then this one was Anna. Next up is Lovebird. And then the last one is Bird of Paradise. And then last but not least, I have some mini palettes. So first we have some Hello Kitty 4 pans. So this one was Cocoa Cutie and Pineapple Cake. Then we have Teeny Keeny and Cherry Sweet. Then there was also a Disney's Bambi collection. So we had the Thumper palette. I love the colors in this one. Next up we have Flower. And then Bambi. Then we had these 5 pans that came in the plastic packaging. So the first one was Lyric. And this one was Ballad. Next up is Crush. And then we have Amour. and Cherish. And then last but not least, we have these little 4-pan palettes. I love the formula of these. I just almost feel like it's a little better than some of their other palettes. I don't know if it's all in my head, but I just love how easy it is to just grab one of these and do a look with it. So the first one is Cream Soda. Next we have Citrus Fizz. This one's the Bold and the Aries. And Pisces in the Sky. Tender Loving Cancer. This is one of my favorites. The Secret Life of Scorpio. Creamsicle. Extra Toppings. And the last one is Sorbet. All right, guys, so that's it for part 2. Everything is looking so much neater, and I was able to make a lot more room. So this basket was all Makeup Revolution before. I was able to cut it down to 1 row and add the Juvia's Place to that one. Then over here I have like a pared down Lorac section, so I was able to add some of my ColourPop over here because that ColourPop one was seriously overflowing, and it looks so much neater now. So I'm really, really happy with the way that this turned out. Definitely, if you'd like to see part 3, I have some more bins on the other side of the room that I could definitely tackle and declutter. So let me know down in the comments below. Thank you so much, guys, for hanging out with me today. I appreciate it so much. If you like this video, don't forget to give it a thumbs up. And also, if you like collection videos, dupes, drugstore makeup, definitely subscribe to my channel before you go as well. Thank you so much, guys. I'll see you in my next video. Take care. Bye.